Yo, 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 good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You know who it is. It's your boy, it's your host, Calvin-Domingo, aka Steezy A. Smith. And today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. As I like to call them, I have a VIG on the show with me today. And for those of you who might not recall, VIG in my book stands for a very important guest. So why wait any longer? Today I have NFL Network's Mr. Mike Yam. So please, guys, give him a round of applause. And let's not wait any longer. Mike Yam in the building. How you doing, Mike?
Yo, what's good, man? How are you?
Oh, I'm feeling wonderful. I'm feeling lovely. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm doing even better because whenever I see a Seattle Sonics throwback jersey in the background, that will bring a smile to my face. So well played, man. Well played. I was actually, and I know part of the reason why you're having me on is because I was at the Washington Pro Day, saw a dude with a Sonics like old school jacket on, and just in my mind just immediately started smiling because I always have good memories of Sean Kemp just absolutely just dunking on dudes. So always brings a smile to my face.
Oh man, anything I could do to put a smile on your face, I
You're
try.
too young to know about Kemp though, and seeing him back in the heyday.
What?
So,
No, I didn't watch him. I didn't watch him live, but I know a thing or two about Mr. Sean Kemp. If I recall correctly, Mike, you are a Sonics fan, right? Or you grew up a Sonics fan?
No, well, look, I grew up a Knicks fan. I grew up in the Northeast, but I was such a big NBA guy. And it's funny because before I got to NFL Network, I was at Pac-12 Network. And, one of my favorite things to do, Calvin, was to go and talk to broadcast students. And I remember this is a couple years ago, I was down at SC and I made reference to Sean Kemp. A lot of times you just kind of read in the room, and I noticed I was getting the blank stares. I'm thinking to myself, damn, like they don't know who Sean Kemp is. So I said, hey, guys, I just mentioned Sean Kemp. Do you guys know who Sean Kemp is? And no one knew. And I was like, oh my God, I got old real fast. So on the fly, the best I could come up with was he was Blake Griffin well before Blake Griffin in SD, not HD. But like that doesn't even do it justice. Like Kemp was a better player than Blake. But besides, it's like it was the only thing I could come up with on the fly. So
I was just gonna say, not know Sean Kemp in the Seattle area is almost criminal.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But speaking of,
it's all those SoCal kids. That's what it was. So I'll give them the pass.
Okay.
But you're right. If you're in Seattle and you don't know Kemp and GP, just kind of rating. We can go big smooth. I'm trying. McMillan was on that team. Sorry, I know we talk football. Good one. Good one.
Yeah. Della Shrimp.
Oh, the rainbow triples up in the air, man. Thing used to go up to the scoreboard and like find its way to the bottom of the hoop. So always impressive.
Mike, I gotta have you on a Sonic show or on an NBA show.
Done.
I feel like we can talk all day.
That was my childhood. So I'm down for that anytime.
Right. Okay. Well, speaking of Seattle, though, you were actually in Seattle, like you said. You were at UW's Pro Day yesterday, and you got to spend some time in Seattle. Before we kick things off, I want to ask, how do you like Seattle?
Oh, I love it, man. It's one of the best parts about working at NFL Network is they do let me live my old life at Pac-12 Network. So whenever these pro days kind of roll through, like last year, I got to go to Stanford and UW. Elijah Molden, he was working out last year. It was funny. I texted his dad. I was like, man, a year has gone by. And Alex, obviously a great football player in his own right, former NFL guy, played with Oregon years ago. And it was great to see him last season as Elijah was going through the process. But this year, I'm in Seattle. I was in Seattle, and I'm actually heading to Oregon. Kayvon Thibodeau certainly projected to be a top 5 pick. Maybe he goes outside. The range is wide with him, but certainly a lot of attention on some of these dogs in the Seattle area. But to answer your question, man, one of my favorite campuses, absolutely gorgeous. So I always tell people the most underrated college football setting is what they have there at Husky Stadium, and the sailgating. It's awesome, man. We got there early and the crew team was practicing and it's beautiful by the lake. So I don't need to tell you, man, that's home for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, before I became a pro Wazoo guy, UW was always a dream school. I remember taking field trips out over there in high school. And, sometimes I kind of wish I kind of regret not going over there, but things do play out the way that they are, in life. So,
yeah.
I guess that's that. But speaking of
where you're supposed to be. That's what I've been told.
Exactly. And everything that happens for a reason, right?
Yeah. I had an ex-girlfriend that told me that like way. I used to hate it, but it really is true. So
no, right?
Whenever another time.
Because you think of it as pity. You're just like, oh, it's just pity. But then
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like, it's actually, there's a lot of truth to that.
No, it really is. Yeah, there is definitely a lot of truth to it. But you're right. I mean, look, an exciting time, I think, for a lot of fans in that Seattle area. New head coach there, but I think even and I know your focus is usually on the Seahawks and the pro side. I mean, UW's got some dudes, two
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
certainly with McDuffie, who's projected to be, potentially a top 15 pick, and Kyler Gordon, who I think could get drafted soon after. First of all, nicest dudes that you'll meet over the years. The amount of talent that has emanated from that cornerback, that DB room, it's pretty impressive. I always dub them DBU, but since 2015, they've had at least two dudes drafted in the first two rounds at that time since 2015. That's the fifth most in FBS play. And like these guys will add to that total. McDuffie's going to be a first round guy. I highly, highly doubt Kyler Gordon falls outside of round number 2. I just don't see that happen. I think he can even sneak into the back half of round number 1. But the point is, man, what Chris Peterson was there, certainly with Jimmy, and I know he was only a head coach for a short period of time, but his stamp on this team's defense. You can go to the Taylor Rapps of the world, the Sidney Jones, the Kevin Kings of the world. Like that program is really special.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I had to put it down there. Like you said, it's been referred to as DBU for its knack to develop NFL caliber corners. I mean, 2014. Oh, yeah, I had to put it out there. I mean, my gosh.
You got some graphics producers who are jealous right now that don't work that fast. I looked down, I'm like, oh, damn, he's got that up there. So.
I know. I noticed that you didn't notice. So I was just like, I'm going to wait for him to say something. But going back to the pro day, what was your biggest takeaway?
Wow, there was a lot. Look, there was 30 teams, NFL teams that were in attendance. I do know the Cincinnati Bengals were one of the teams not there. I don't know who the second team was, but that was sort of interesting to me from that perspective. Look, I talked about the DBs. For me, biggest takeaway is those guys are ready. Look, neither one of them ran their 40s. Both of them, I talked to him before their drills had kicked up, and I had said, "Hey, you guys aren't running today, right?" And they're like, "No." And that's not a surprise. Most of these guys, when I head to Eugene for Oregon's Pro Day on Friday, I'd be shocked if Kayvon Thibodeau is running. That's just generally the advice that they get from a lot of their camps, just not to run, especially if you put up a good time at the combine. Gordon and McDuffie both did that, so no shocker there. I think a couple things. The poise, I'll start with McDuffie, the poise that he brings to the table on a level of maturity. Talked to a couple coaches, Calvin, before the pro day, and I said, hey man, like what's elite about McDuffie? And they can rave about his skill set, what he does on the field, him as a person. One of the guys on the staff said, look, we were never ever worried about him, no matter where we put him on the field. Never worried about a busted assignment, never worried about a lack of concentration. In a lot of ways, he described him as the perfect NFL player, because all the things that you want off the field, he's going to check that box. The acumen is there, and then the skill level is abundantly clear. So that's on the McDuffie side. He was just, Calvin, he's cool, calm, and collected on a day where you think most of the time these guys would be pretty nervous. He's like, look, man, like I just got in and run the 40. He didn't participate in a lot of the drills, but he said, I just wanted them to see me, these NFL teams, as me as a person, what I can bring to the table and how much I love the game of football. He's a film rat. And I think on the flip side, Kyler Gordon comes to mind, man. He's a freak athlete. And you and I were talking off air about this, Calvin. Look, his vertical, I'm looking here. So you get 39.5. That's what he actually jumped at his pro day. I think he can do better. He told me he could do better. There were some reports. I think it was Bruce Feldman a while ago had him as one of his freak athletes, 42.5-inch vertical. Now it's tough because when you go, for anyone who hasn't been to a pro day, and I would imagine that's most of the people watching your show right now, it's monitored, right? Like they got, the stand that's there, and even the guy that's dictating the drill is like, yo, we've seen all the tricks, so don't even bother. You'll have to re-jump and the whole thing. But what was fascinating, Calvin, the dude, when he takes off, like we were joking about Sean Kemp, right? When certain guys jump, you're like, ooh, damn. It looks different. It sounds different. The explosiveness is on display. Gordon, I've been now to a bunch of pro days. I've seen guys work out multiple sports. Kyler Gordon jumping is something that is a sight. In fact, the same guy that I was talking to on their staff, I was asking about Kyler and when he got there. He's like, man, this guy can 360 dunk. He said his freshman year, guys are just messing around on the basketball floor. He goes through his legs and windmill dunks. I mean, which is not a surprise. And I think people realize, he comes from a dancing background. He was a competitive dancer as a kid. The footwork is certainly helpful. He did every drill except run the 40, and he looked good doing it. The hips, the fluidity of his movement, it's pretty impressive. So I think big picture, those are two of the big takeaways. I know there was a lot of attention on those dudes. I'd be remiss if I did not add Cade Otton to the mix. I think he's got a chance at the tight end spot to make a team. And then Luke Wattenberg, who I talked to Scott Huff, who's their offensive line coach, ahead of the East-West Shrine game in Vegas about him. And he was just raving about his versatility. And look, it's his position coach, so you would anticipate that. Calvin, the day before the game, the announcers, we get to go and meet with the coaching staffs. And it's rare when specific offensive linemen get called out in those meetings. Wattenberg's name was called out, and the coaching staff was really impressed by him. So to me, there's something to be said for the excitement around him. I do think he gets drafted, and I think his versatility keeps him in the league for an extended period of time.
Oh, no doubt. Man, you hit on so many different points.
Yeah,
here, so
I unloaded on you.
No, we want that. I want that. So I don't mind at all. But because you hit on so many different points, forgive me, we are going to have to backtrack just a little bit and kind of go back to a few of the players. I wanted to ask, though, I actually wanted to go back to your interview because I saw that on NFL Network, and you asked McDuffie about, what would you attribute a lot of that success to? And he just talked about preparation, spending time in the film room like you alluded to. So that being said, what do you think is the likelihood that he overtakes at LSU's Derek Stingley as the second corner off the board, presumably after a Sauce Gardner?
Yeah, Sauce will probably go off the board first. I was actually talking to a scout that was there about some of the subtle differences between these guys. And I think one thing, I do some studio shows at NFL Network. One thing that was clear was I think there's some concern, a certain degree, not overwhelming, about Sauce and the level of competition and not going up against premier talent every single week. It was fascinating. I talked to one scout in Seattle for that pro day, and I mentioned Sauce. And I was like, hey man, like would that restrict you from considering a player like that? And this particular person said, no, not at all. He's like, look, if you can play, you can play. And some of those moments and some of the skills that you bring to the table, like we anticipate that you have to project out some of those things. So you're right. I do think Sauce is the first one off the board. Do I think Trent's got an opportunity to surpass Derek? Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's going to happen. What's going to be fascinating to me, Calvin, is to see the run in that top 10, top 12. This class, look, we can say what we want about the quarterback spot. I think it's well chronicled. Just not the strongest class in terms of that position, but it is strong on the defensive side, specifically those edge rushers. I would imagine there's in that top 10, top 12 picks, you talk about 5 edge guys that might get drafted early. So that does open the door for Sauce. I think is going to be one of those guys taken off the board. Stingley's going to be one of those guys taken off the board. McDuffie's going to be in that conversation. And then the teams that are looking for a wide receiver, whether it's Wilson, Olave certainly comes to mind. There's some guys to be had there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trent goes before Stingley, but I think most of the mocks and most of the people that do this for a living will tell you probably Derek goes first. I'd have to go back and see the film if Kyle Phillips, the wide receiver at UCLA, had matched up against McDuffie at all. But I think the one thing that'll help Kyle Phillips, the receiver, is to put on the tape UCLA LSU and show guys what he did against Stingley at the end of that particular matchup. Not the best show for Derek Stingley Jr., but certainly a good take for Kyle Phillips. But I do think McDuffie is in that conversation with those guys.
Hopefully you didn't see all that, but I was having a whole bunch of connection issues, so I apologize if I was I don't know if you heard anything, but man, again, so much to unload. But like we talked about earlier, right? The University of Washington has been referred to as DBU for its knack for developing NFL caliber corners. How likely is it that 2 go in the first round in next month's draft? Obviously, McDuffie is a lock to be in the first round. Kyler Gordon, I've seen him go in the first round in a couple of mock drafts. How likely is that, if at all?
I was more impressed with Kyler in person than I was ahead of time. The film screams volumes at anyone who's watched. You look at both of those two dudes, by the way. top 5 nationally in FBS play in terms of the PFF coverage grade. So what they can do is notable. The fact that there's 30 NFL teams there, and the teams that were there that presumably aren't picking in the top 10, 12 spots leads me to think that Kyler Gordon is a guy that you're probably going to be, his name is going to be called pretty soon after McDuffie. Now, I don't know if that means he squeaks into that first round. I think he does. I think he's got an opportunity just based off of a couple of those conversations that I had at that pro day that there's definitely a chance for him. Athletically, he can compete with anyone. That to me is the most impressive thing. And I think his development, Calvin, over time, I think if you watched him early, I remember being there on that campus his freshman year. And look, that team was loaded. He was a wiry kid, a little lanky, had a pick in that practice. To see his physical development is impressive. And I do think that is something that is going to help him out at the next level. Can he support in the run game? I think the answer is yes. And I think that's an advantage for him that I don't know if I would have said a few years ago. Coverage skills are there, but once again, athletically, he's a kid that when he got to Seattle and was wearing that uniform, that Husky uniform, he relied on that athleticism. Problem is, other guys are really talented as well. And I think the technique and some of the nuance around that position is something that he's had to learn. And he has. And I think that's why you will hear his name called in the first round.
Okay. And then a couple questions here. I know you do have to go in just a little bit. Are you at all concerned by Kyler Gordon's 4.52 40-yard dash?
No. Calvin, I don't know where you stand on this, man, but like, to me, watch the tape. Like, I think it's cool. Like, we make a big thing of the measurables. And look, I was talking about his vert, right? 39.5. And it looked better than 39.5. But my biggest thing is, hey, what did Dion used to say? Next man speed, right? Like, you can run the 40, but like, when you're getting chased down or you got to get chased down, like, what does that look like? So I think, and they run with pads on too, right? So like, there's that aspect of it. And we're talking about fractions of a second. I kind of smile, when I hear some of these 40 times, I'm like, man, yeah. Do you want to chase him down? Do you think he's going to get chased down, when he's got pads on? So I think there's a lot of that. I think depending on the position and the person, generally if you're in that mix, I think you'll be fine. I'm not overly concerned. And I think if he probably would have ran the 40 again. I think the 40 time for him, it was good enough. You don't do every drill at your pro day and not run the 40 if you don't feel good about it. If that's the case, you just don't do as many drills. And he did everything yesterday.
And I think athletically, I mean, he possesses all the tools. So it's just like you said, it's just a 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
But Mike, before you go, as you know, I'm a Seahawks fan. And Seahawks do have a need at cornerback. So with 3 picks in the top 50, how likely is it that the Seahawks target 1, if not 2, of McDuffie and Kyler Gordon with the 3 picks in the top 50?
Well, a couple things here. One, Seattle was in attendance, which is not a surprise, right? It's right down the street. So, of course, they would show up. But they were there, number one. Number two, and you know this, Pete Carroll finds ways to find Pac-12 players on his roster. Mm-hmm. I think if I had to guess, and I don't know this for sure, so maybe I'm completely off base, but my gut is the Seahawks probably have more Pac-12 players than most teams in the NFL. It feels that way. Whenever I watch a game, I hear a name. Whenever I look at the roster, I see a face or see a name on the page there. So I do think there's something to be said for that. And they've pulled some other guys from that program. Disley certainly comes to mind as one of those players. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The point is, Calvin, I would not be surprised if Seattle finds their way of looking at one of those dudes. It really comes down to, how do you value both of these players? Can you get McDuffie at the level that you're comfortable with? And the same thing for Kyler. I think, look, based off of the mocks, Kyler's going to go after Trent, but I don't know how much further he's going to drop down. And I think the more you get to know these kids and talk to them, the more impressive they really are. So to me, they check a lot of boxes. I would not be surprised if Seattle's looking at least one of these dudes to help out that team's defense. Do we have more internet issues, Calvin? I think I lost you, bud. Oh, there we go.
Oh man, my gosh! Thank
No,
goodness
no,
it's
no. It's
ending
all,
because the internet's just real bad over here. I'm so
no, no,
so
no.
sorry.
It's all good. I mean, I got forced to look at my own face there for a couple seconds. I try to avoid that as much as possible.
No, Mike, you got it all wrong. But again, look, like I said, you do have to go. So thank you so much for spending some time with us. Before
For
you do
sure, man.
go, though, any plugs, anything you want to shout out?
No, man. I've been catching your shows. I found them on social media. Big fan of what you're doing, man. Continue to grind. I always like when I see younger dudes kind of in the mix, trying to come up and trying to have some fun with their sports commentary. So keep up the good work, my friend, and hopefully we'll do this again real soon.
Oh, we will. Again, thank you so much for the high praise, Mike.
Yeah,
I hope you have a great rest of your door. Excuse me, great rest of your day,
for
and
sure, man.
take it easy.
Awesome, man. Take care.
All right, thank you. All right. All right, y'all. So sorry for any sort of connection and internet issues. But we got through it. Again, like I said, this is something we don't normally do. So if you guys want to see more interviews, or if you guys want to see us cover other topics such as more of the NFL draft stuff, more pro day stuff, more combine stuff, please definitely be sure to let us know on Instagram or on Twitter via DM. Again, that was NFL Network's Mike Yim. Like he said, he actually came across, my page, my YouTube on, I don't know what social media platform it was, but about a month ago, kind of just sent me a DM, told me that he liked what I was doing, like what we were doing over here. And ever since then, we've kind of forged a relationship, and here he is on the show. So definitely be sure to expect him on the show, on future shows. I do want to have him on a roundtable with a couple of other special guests. So for those of you guys that tuned in, thank you so much. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Steezy Smith, on Twitter at Steezy Smith. And if for some reason you're watching this and you aren't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, please. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Also do the same at Steezy Smith, SteezySmith. And again, if you guys want to see us talk more draft stuff, be sure to let us know in the comments down below. That's gonna be it for me today, y'all. Again, this has been your host, Calvin-Domingo, aka Steezy Smith. All glory to God. Steezy out.